I paid off my parents' debt and bought them a new car. My cousin called me poor, and they agreed. So I took everything back without a word. It turns out my parents were swayed by him, so I decided to reclaim everything. I'm 28 years old and work as a maintenance supervisor at an apartment complex. The pay is quite good, and I've been setting aside money for years, hoping to do something special for my parents. They've been struggling financially ever since my dad was laid off from his factory job 2 years ago, and my mom's part-time retail work barely covers the cost of groceries. They've fallen behind on their mortgage, accumulated credit card debt, and their car was making a terrible grinding sound whenever they drove it. On top of that, the air conditioning stopped working last summer, and they couldn't afford the repairs. Watching them stress over money for months was agonizing. They are good people who worked tirelessly their entire lives and raised me properly. I constantly thought about all the sacrifices they made when I was young. My mom would pack meager lunches for work to ensure my sister and I had more food, and my dad drove the same old beat-up truck for 15 years, claiming new cars were only for the wealthy. They never directly asked for assistance, but I could see the deepening lines of worry on their faces with every visit. My mom even started buying generic brands for everything at the grocery store, including the sandpaper-like toilet paper. So I decided to genuinely surprise them, not just by settling one bill, but by completely transforming their financial situation. I wanted them to feel secure again, free from the burden of choosing between the electricity bill and necessary medication. I had been saving money for a down payment on my own home, but I realized that could wait. My parents needed help immediately. What good is buying a house when the people who raised me are drowning in debt and driving a car that could break down at any moment? I spent weeks meticulously planning this whole endeavor. First, I contacted their mortgage company and paid off the remaining balance, which was around $47,000. Then, I reached out to all their credit card companies and settled every single debt they had, totaling another $23,000. Finally, I went to the Honda dealership and bought them a brand new 2024 CR-V in silver, my mom's favorite color, fully equipped with heated seats, a backup camera, and all the features they never imagined they could afford. My plan was to surprise them on Sunday when they returned home from church, as that's when our whole family typically gathers at their house for dinner. I wanted everyone present to witness their reaction when they realized their financial worries were gone and a beautiful new car sat in their driveway. I had been incredibly excited about this for weeks. I could barely sleep the night before, constantly picturing their happiness. I imagined my mom shedding tears of joy and my dad getting emotional, though he'd try to conceal it. I arrived at their house early and parked the new CR-V directly in the driveway, adorned with a massive red bow. Then, I waited inside with my sister Sarah, the only person aware of the surprise, as I needed her help coordinating everything. When my parents pulled up in their old Honda and saw the new car, my mom literally shrieked, and my dad just stood there with his mouth agape. For about 10 minutes, everything was perfect. My mom was running her hands over the paint and examining the interior, while my dad checked out all the features. They kept asking whose car it was and if someone was visiting. Eventually, I told them it was theirs, and that I had also paid off their house and all their credit cards. The expression on their faces was everything I had hoped for. My mom started crying and embracing me, and my dad became choked up, repeatedly saying he couldn't believe it. But then my cousin Derek appeared, and that's when everything went downhill. Derek is one of those individuals who always has to make everything about himself and cannot tolerate anyone else receiving attention. Derek works in tech, earning approximately $150,000 a year, and he never allows anyone to forget it. He constantly talks about his stock options, his loft, and proudly displays his Tesla. He's been the family's golden child since graduating from college. Derek looked at the car and immediately began asking questions about its cost and how I could afford it on my salary. I should have recognized the warning signs right then. As his tone suggested, he was already preparing to undermine me. I tried to dismiss his questions, saying I had been saving and wanted to do something kind for my parents. But Derek wouldn't let it go, continuously pressing for exact figures. At this point, my parents were still emotional and grateful. And my dad was telling Derek about how I had paid off the house as well. Derek's face completely transformed, as if someone had flipped a switch. He began lecturing about how this didn't make financial sense and how I was likely putting myself in a precarious position. He said all of this in front of everyone, as if he were some financial advisor, instead of simply being happy for my parents. Then my Aunt Linda arrived, Derek's mother and my dad's sister. Derek immediately started telling her what I had done, but he framed it as though I had made a reckless decision rather than a generous one. Aunt Linda had always been inexplicably jealous of my parents, so now we had Derek and Aunt Linda whispering. In the corner, while my parents were still admiring the car, I could sense something brewing because Derek kept glancing at me with a smug expression. My sister Sarah tried to change the subject and direct everyone's attention to dinner, but you could feel the tension in the air, like an approaching storm. That's when Derek decided to truly make a scene. He said, loud enough for everyone to hear, that it was amusing how I was trying to be the big shot when I probably earned less in a year than he made in 3 months. Just like that, out of nowhere, he attacked my job and my income when I had just done something incredibly generous for my parents. I told Derek that this wasn't about money or showing off. It was about helping family. But he wasn't finished. Apparently, he had been waiting for an opportunity to put me in my place. He went on about how I was a maintenance worker, and he was in tech, and how I probably didn't understand the tax implications of what I had just done. He insisted I should have consulted with someone who actually understood money before making such a significant financial decision. My mom tried to tell Derek to stop, but he was on a roll. He suggested that instead of buying cars I couldn't afford, I should focus on building a real career, like he did. That's when I completely lost my composure, because this guy has never performed a day of manual labor in his life and doesn't comprehend what real work entails. I told Derek that at least I didn't spend my time disparaging family members who were trying to help, and that some of us measure success by more than just our bank accounts. But Derek just laughed, saying that's what people say when they don't have money. Aunt Linda interjected, claiming Derek was simply being practical and looking out for everyone's best interests, which was utter nonsense, as Derek has never looked out for anyone but himself. Then my dad, who I thought would defend me or at least tell Derek to back off, said that Derek had a point about being smart with money, and perhaps I should have discussed it with them before making such a major decision. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Here I was, having just paid off their house and bought them a car, and my own father was siding with Derek over me. My mom chimed in, saying she was grateful but worried about whether I could truly afford all this. She was looking at me with a concerned expression, as if I were some child who didn't know how to manage money. The entire conversation had completely shifted from being about my generous gift to being about my poor financial judgment. I stood there feeling like I was being attacked from all sides. Derek then said, "And I will never forget this, because it was so cruel, that it was sweet I wanted to help. But perhaps next time I should stick to gifts more appropriate for my income level, like a nice dinner or something." That's when my mom said, and this is what truly devastated me, that she appreciated what I did, but wished I had Derek's career sense, because then I would have found a smarter way to help them that wouldn't put me at risk. She was comparing me to Derek, right to my face, after I had just given them everything I had saved for my own future, and she was acting as if Derek would have handled it better. I stood there for a minute, just processing what had transpired. In the span of 20 minutes, I went from being the generous son who solved all their problems to being the irresponsible one who needed Derek's approval for my financial decisions. My sister Sarah was looking at me with a horrified expression because she could see exactly what was happening, but everyone else was acting as if Derek's concerns were completely reasonable. I finally stated that I couldn't believe they were turning my gift into a criticism of my life choices, and that if they thought Derek was so much smarter with money, perhaps he should be the one helping them instead of me. My dad said I was being too sensitive, and that they were just trying to ensure I didn't harm myself financially. My mom said she never claimed anything was wrong with my job, but then she added that she just worried about my future, and whether I would be able to build the kind of life Derek had. And there it was again, the comparison to my cousin who earns more money, and therefore must be superior to me somehow. Derek just stood there with a satisfied smile on his face, because he had successfully transformed my moment into his moment, where everyone was discussing how much smarter and more successful he was compared to me. Aunt Linda was nodding in agreement, saying how proud she was of Derek. I told them all that I was finished with this conversation, and that if they thought Derek was so much better at handling money, they could give him the car keys and see how generous he felt like being. My dad said I was being ridiculous, and that's not what anyone meant. But I was already walking toward the door because I could feel myself about to completely lose control. And I didn't want to say something I couldn't retract. My mom followed me, saying I was overreacting and that everyone was just concerned about me. But I told her that if she was truly concerned about me, she wouldn't have spent the last hour making me feel like an idiot for trying to help. She said, "That's not fair, and they're grateful for what I did." But then she asked if I truly could afford it, and whether I had enough money left for emergencies. I just looked at her and said that it was too late to worry about that now since the money was already spent. And perhaps next time she should consider defending her son instead of questioning his judgment in front of people who love to disparage him. She started to say something else, but I was already in my truck driving away. I was so angry that I had to pull over after a few blocks because my hands were shaking. I spent the next few days reflecting on what had happened, growing more furious with each replay in my head. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Derek had meticulously planned this whole thing. He saw an opportunity to make me look bad and seized it, and my parents simply went along with it instead of telling him to be quiet and be grateful that someone had helped them. The truly messed up part is that Derek had never once offered to help my parents with their financial problems. Now, I never expected him to, since he's just my cousin, but helping family is a good thing to do. So I decided I wasn't going to let this pass. I called the Honda dealership and informed them I wanted to return the car. They said I had 3 days left on their satisfaction guarantee, and I could bring it back for a full refund, as long as it had less than 200 miles on it. I also called my bank and had them reverse the payments to the mortgage company and the credit card companies, which was complicated, but achievable, since everything had just been processed and hadn't gone through all the final clearances yet. It cost me some fees, but I didn't care because I wasn't about to let my money pay for a house and car that my parents were going to enjoy while thinking Derek was superior to me. I drove over to my parents' house on Wednesday morning, when I knew they would both be home, and I told them I was taking the car back and reversing all the payments. My mom immediately started crying and asking why I would do that, and my dad became enraged, demanding to know what was wrong with me. I told them exactly what was wrong, that I had spent my life savings trying to help them, and instead of being grateful, they spent the entire time making me feel like I was too foolish and poor to make sound decisions. I said that if Derek was so much smarter about money, they could ask him to pay off their debts and buy them a car, and let's see how that worked out for them. My dad said I was being childish, and that I misunderstood what happened, but I told him there was no misunderstanding. I heard exactly what he said about Derek having a point, and I heard my mom say she wished I had Derek's career sense. I said that when someone gives you a gift worth $70,000, you say thank you, not mock them instead. They both started begging me not to take everything back, and my dad said they would talk to Derek about what he said, but I told them the damage was already done, and I wasn't interested in forced apologies or trying to make Derek behave better. I said that Derek showed his true colors, and they showed theirs by agreeing with him instead of defending me. I told them they had until Friday to make other arrangements, because that's when I was picking up the CRV to return it to the dealership. My mom was full-on sobbing at this point, and my dad was yelling about how I was punishing them for something. Derek did. But I told them Derek didn't make them compare me to him or question my financial judgment. They chose to do that themselves. The bank stuff took longer to reverse than I expected, because apparently when you pay off someone's mortgage, there are all these legal processes that have to be undone, and the credit card companies were confused about why I wanted to reverse payments that had already been applied to the accounts. I had to fill out a bunch of paperwork and pay some penalty fees. But by Friday, everything was back to how it was before. Except now my parents knew exactly how I felt about their reaction to my gift. I went back to get the car, and my parents were both there waiting for me. My dad tried one more time to talk me out of it. He said they had learned their lesson, and they would never let Derek disrespect me again. And my mom said she was sorry for making me feel unappreciated. But I could tell they still didn't really get it, because my dad kept talking about Derek as if the problem was just that Derek was rude, not that they agreed with him. I told them that the problem wasn't Derek being rude. The problem was that, after I gave them everything I had saved for my own future, their first instinct was to worry that I wasn't smart enough to make that decision. I said that Derek didn't put those words in their mouths. He just gave them permission to say what they were already thinking. My mom tried to argue that they were just concerned about me, but I asked her why she was more concerned about my financial situation after I helped them than she was before, when they were the ones drowning in debt. I said that if Derek hadn't been there, would they have spent the whole time questioning my judgment and comparing me to my cousin, or would they have just been grateful? Neither of them could answer that question, which told me everything I needed to know about whether they actually appreciated what I tried to do for them. I took the car and drove it straight to the dealership. The whole way there, I felt this strange mix of sadness and relief, like I was disappointed, but also glad that I found out how they really felt about me before I wasted any more money trying to help them. The dealership was pretty agreeable about the whole return process, and I got most of my money back, minus some fees and the cost of the bow and a few other things. The mortgage and credit card reversals went through without any major problems, though I did have to pay some processing fees and interest charges that had accumulated by the time everything was settled. My parents were back to exactly where they started financially, except now they knew that I had the money to help them, but chose not to because of how they treated me. I thought that would be the end of it, but apparently word got around the family about what happened, and now everyone has opinions about my decision. Derek called me and had the audacity to say that I overreacted and that he was just trying to look out for my best interests, as if I'm supposed to believe that his little speech about income levels and appropriate gifts was motivated by concern for me. I told Derek that if he was so concerned about family finances, he could start writing checks himself instead of critiquing other people's generosity. Aunt Linda has been calling my parents and telling them that I'm being cruel and vindictive, and that family should forgive each other's mistakes. She's also been telling people that I'm jealous of Derek's success, and that's why I became so angry about his helpful advice, which is complete rubbish, because I was angry about being disrespected, not about Derek earning more money than me. My sister Sarah is the only one who completely understands why I did what I did, because she was there and saw how quickly everyone turned on me after Derek started running his mouth. She said it was painful to watch because I was so excited about surprising our parents, and then Derek just ruined the entire moment with his jealousy and need to be the center of attention. My parents want to have a family meeting to discuss everything and try to resolve the situation, but I don't see the point because nothing has truly changed. Derek still believes he's superior to me because he earns more money. My parents still think I should have consulted with someone smarter before helping them. And I still think they're all ungrateful and disrespectful. I'm not going to change my mind about the money, and they're not going to suddenly develop appreciation for what I tried to do for them. The car is returned, the debts are back on their accounts, and everyone knows where they stand with each other now. Some people might think I'm being too severe, or that I should offer them another chance, but I don't think I should have to plead with my own family to respect me and appreciate my generosity. If they can't see the value in what I did without Derek's permission or commentary, then they don't deserve my help. I'm back to saving money for my own house now, and I'm not planning to spend it on anyone else's problems anytime soon. Let Derek help them if he's so smart about money and so concerned about family finances. I'll be over here building my own life and taking care of myself, since apparently that's what I should have been doing all along. Update 1. Well, this entire situation just became even more ludicrous, and I'm honestly astounded at how low my family is willing to stoop to make me appear as the villain instead of simply admitting they made a mistake. So, Derek apparently decided that a simple apology wasn't enough, and instead he's been going around telling everyone that I'm experiencing some kind of mental breakdown, and that's why I overreacted to his useful financial advice. He's been saying that I'm envious of his achievements, and that I made a hasty emotional decision that I'll regret once I calm down and think clearly. My cousin Jennifer called me yesterday and said Derek told her that I was so desperate to compete with him that I spent money I couldn't afford just to show off. And when he tried to offer me some friendly guidance, I lost control because I couldn't handle the truth about my financial situation. Jennifer knows Derek is full of nonsense because she's seen how he operates, but apparently he's been spreading this story to other family members who don't know me as well. The truly messed up part is that Aunt Linda has been endorsing Derek's version of events, telling people that Derek was just being responsible and looking out for me, and that I became angry because I knew he was right about me making an error. She's been portraying Derek as the mature, successful one who tried to help his struggling cousin, and me as the unstable one who can't handle constructive criticism. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. My mom called me one night crying and saying that Derek offered to help them with their financial problems, but only if they promised to convince me to apologize to him and admit that I was wrong. Apparently, Derek's exact words were that he's willing to step up and do what needs to be done for family, but first they need to make sure I understand that my behavior was unacceptable. So Derek is literally holding my parents' financial security hostage until they force me to grovel to him, and they're actually considering it because they're desperate and have no other alternatives. My mom says Derek told them he'd pay off their mortgage and buy them a car, just as I was going to do. But he wants a public apology from me at the next family gathering where I admit that I was jealous and wrong. I told my mom that if she even considers agreeing to Derek's conditions, she's dead to me, because that would mean she values his money more than her own son's dignity. I said that Derek isn't offering to help out of generosity. He's trying to humiliate me and make himself look like the hero who saved the day after I failed. My mom says she doesn't want to hurt me, but they're really struggling. And Derek's offer would solve all their problems. And maybe it wouldn't be so bad to just apologize if it means everyone can move forward. I could not believe what I was hearing, that my own mother was suggesting I should humiliate myself to satisfy Derek's ego, just so she could get her bills paid. I told her that if she accepts Derek's deal, she'll be proving that everything I thought about her priorities is correct, and that she cares more about money than about treating her own son with respect. She started crying harder and saying that's not fair and she loves me, but she's scared about losing the house and doesn't know what else to do. That's when I realized that my parents never actually understood what I did for them, or why I did it. Because if they did, they would never even consider letting Derek turn it into some kind of power play, where I have to beg for forgiveness. They're treating my generous gift and Derek's manipulative offer as if they're the same thing, when Derek is literally trying to buy their loyalty against me. I told my mom that she needs to choose between Derek's money and having me in her life, because I'm not going to stick around and watch him buy his way into being the family golden boy while I get treated like the unstable screw-up who couldn't handle success. She begged me not to make her choose, but I told her that Derek already made the choice when he decided to hold her financial problems hostage until I submitted to him. My dad called me the next day and tried a different approach, saying that maybe we could work out some kind of compromise where I don't have to apologize, but I do have to acknowledge that Derek's concerns were valid. He says Derek is willing to help them regardless of what I do. But it would make things easier for everyone if I could just admit that I acted emotionally. I asked my dad if he even heard himself talking, because he was literally asking me to lie and say that Derek was right to disrespect me and tear down my gift in front of the whole family. I said that Derek's concerns weren't valid. They were jealous and cruel. And the fact that my dad couldn't see the difference showed me everything. I needed to know about whose side he was truly on. My dad says I'm being too stubborn, and that sometimes you have to swallow your pride for the good of the family. But I told him that Derek is the one who should be swallowing his pride and offering a genuine apology instead of trying to buy his way out of the consequences of his behavior. Then my dad says, and this is what truly infuriated me, that Derek has always been successful and good with money, so maybe I should listen to his advice instead of being so defensive about my choices. There it is again. The assumption that Derek's financial success makes him right about everything and makes my decisions automatically wrong. I told my dad that Derek's success doesn't give him the right to tear me down in front of my family, and it doesn't make his opinion more valuable than my own feelings about being disrespected. I said that if he thinks Derek's money makes him a better judge of character than his own son, then maybe he deserves to be in Derek's debt instead of debt-free. Sarah called me after she heard about Derek's offer, and she's as disgusted as I am about the whole situation. She says Derek is being absolutely manipulative, and that our parents are being weak for even considering his deal. But she also understands that they're scared about their financial future, and don't see any other way out. Sarah thinks I should hold firm, and not give Derek the satisfaction of getting an apology out of me, even if it means our parents stay in debt. She says that if they choose Derek's money over my dignity, that tells us everything we need to know about their values and what kind of people they really are. But then Sarah also said something that's been bothering me, which is that she's worried this whole situation is going to permanently damage our family, and that years from now, we'll all regret how things unfolded. She's not saying I should apologize, but she's wondering if there's some other way to resolve this that doesn't end with our parents struggling financially and half the family not speaking to each other. I told Sarah that I didn't create this situation. Derek did when he decided to attack me for being generous, and our parents made it worse when they agreed with him instead of defending me. I said that if the family becomes fractured, it's because Derek valued his ego more than family harmony, and our parents valued his opinion more than their son's feelings. The thing that really gets me is that Derek's offer proves everything I suspected about him, which is that he never cared about helping our parents. He just wanted to make sure everyone knew he was more successful than me. If he actually cared about family, he would have helped them years ago when they first started struggling, instead of waiting until after I tried to help them, so he could use it as an opportunity to put me down. And now he's using their desperation to force me into a humiliating apology that he can hold over my head forever, because if I give in to his demands, everyone will remember that Derek made me admit I was wrong and jealous and financially irresponsible. He's not trying to solve a problem. He's trying to win a competition that only existed in his head. I've been thinking about what Sarah said about permanent damage to the family, and honestly, maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. Maybe We need to find out once and for all who values what and who's willing to treat family members with basic respect, versus who's willing to sell that respect for the right price. If my parents take Derek's deal, I'll know that their love is conditional on me staying in my place, and never doing anything that might make Derek feel insecure about his position as the family success story. And if they don't take his deal, Derek will know that his money can't buy him the family worship he thinks he deserves. Either way, at least everyone will know where they stand with each other, which is better than pretending we're all close while Derek gets to treat me like garbage and my parents get to benefit from my generosity while secretly thinking Derek is better than me. I'm not going to apologize to Derek, and I'm not going to beg my parents to choose me over his money. I did what I thought was right when I tried to help them, and I did what I thought was right when I took that help back after they disrespected me. Now they can do what they think is right, and we'll all live with the consequences. Update 2. After my last update, my parents were supposed to meet with Derek to finalize the details of his offer to help them. But Derek never appeared, and has been avoiding their calls ever since. My mom called me Thursday night, crying and saying that Derek had been texting her with excuses about being busy with work projects, but that he would get back to them soon about the payment schedule. I told my mom that Derek was obviously stalling, and that his offer was probably never genuine to begin with. But she didn't want to hear it, because accepting that would mean admitting that she chose his false promise over her true son. She kept saying that Derek was a good person, who wouldn't lie about something like that, and that he was probably just trying to work out the logistics of such a large financial commitment. But then Friday morning, my mom called me in a complete panic because Derek's landlord had contacted her looking for him. Apparently, Derek gave my parents' number as a reference when he signed his lease, and now he's 3 months behind on rent and about to be evicted. The landlord was asking if my parents knew where Derek was because he's been avoiding calls, and they need to discuss payment arrangements, or else he's getting kicked out. My mom was perplexed because Derek had been boasting about his expensive loft for years, and she couldn't understand why someone who earned 6 figures would be behind on rent. I told her that perhaps Derek's financial situation wasn't as stable as he pretended it was, and that might explain why his offer to help them kept getting postponed with vague excuses. Then Saturday afternoon, my cousin Jennifer called me with information that completely clarified everything that's been happening. Apparently, Derek tried to borrow money from her last week, claiming he had a temporary cash flow problem, but would repay her with interest as soon as his next stock options vested. Jennifer grew suspicious because Derek has been bragging about his wealth for years, so she started asking questions about his job and his finances. It turns out that Derek was laid off from his tech company 4 months ago and has been living off credit cards and unemployment benefits ever since. But he's been too embarrassed to tell anyone in the family because his entire identity is built around being the successful one. The downtown loft he's always showing off. He can't afford the rent and is about to get evicted. And the Tesla he loves to brag about is getting repossessed next week because he's behind on the payments. Jennifer said that when she pressed Derek about his job situation, he completely broke down and admitted that he's been lying to everyone about his financial success because he couldn't bear the thought of the family knowing he was struggling. He's been putting everything on credit cards to maintain his lifestyle while job hunting, but the tech market is challenging right now, and he hasn't been able to find anything that pays what his old job did. So when Derek was giving me all that grief about my financial decisions and acting like he was so much smarter with money, he was actually drowning in debt, and probably incredibly envious that I had $70,000 in savings to help our parents, while he couldn't even pay his own rent. His entire speech about appropriate gifts for my income level was pure projection, because he was the one who couldn't afford to be generous, not me. He was literally playing games with my parents' financial security just to feed his ego and make me look bad. I told Jennifer that this explained everything about Derek's behavior, because successful people don't usually spend so much time tearing down other people's generosity unless they're insecure about their own situation. Derek wasn't attacking my gift because he thought it was financially irresponsible. He was attacking it because it made him look bad by comparison when he couldn't help our parents himself. Jennifer agreed and said that Derek had always been competitive and jealous, but losing his job had made him desperate to prove that he was still superior to everyone else. She said that Derek probably viewed my generous gift as a threat to his position as the family's success story, especially since I work in maintenance and he's always looked down on blue-collar jobs. So now the truth is emerging, and my parents are starting to realize that Derek's offer was never real, which means they sacrificed their relationship with me for absolutely nothing. My mom has been calling me non-stop since Jennifer told her about Derek's real financial situation, begging me to forgive them and help them again. My mom keeps saying that they were manipulated by Derek and that they're sorry for believing his lies over their own son's proven generosity. She says that Derek took advantage of their desperation and made them think his offer was legitimate when he knew he couldn't follow through, and that she feels terrible for choosing his false promise over my real help. But I told my mom that Derek didn't manipulate them into questioning my judgment and comparing me to him. They chose to do that themselves because they agreed with his assessment of my life and career. I said that Derek's financial problems don't excuse the fact that they listened to him tear me down and decided he was right about me being irresponsible and unsuccessful. Sarah is furious about the entire Derek situation and says that he's even worse than we thought, because he was willing to give our parents false hope about their financial problems just to satisfy his own ego. She says that Derek knew he couldn't help them, but let them believe he could, which is cruel and manipulative on a level that goes beyond just being jealous. I'm not wavering on this, and I'm not helping them again, because Derek being a liar doesn't change the fact that my parents were willing to throw me under the bus for the promise of paid bills. They showed me what their priorities are and what they really think of me, and Derek's financial problems don't erase that or make their behavior any less hurtful.